You ever notice how small yard gardeners sometimes talk like they've accepted their fate? Like the universe wrote them a tiny backyard and said, here, take this little patch of earth and keep your expectations humble. But every time I hear someone say, my yard's too small for fruit trees, I can't help but laugh, lovingly, because it's one of the most persistent gardening myths on the planet. And today we're breaking it completely. Not just breaking it, we're planting something way better in its place. Let me tell you something all of us eventually learn. Small yards don't limit you. Old gardening habits do. The world has changed. Plants have changed, varieties have changed, and the way we grow food at home has completely transformed. What once needed a whole orchard now fits in the corner of a patio. What used to demand deep soil and wide spacing now thrives in a pot you can lift with one hand. And the best part? These compact fruit trees don't look compromised or weak. They're not the diet version of the real thing. They're full strength, full flavor, full yield trees designed for people like us who want abundance without acreage. So today, we're exploring something special. 10 fruit trees that fit beautifully into small yards, tiny yards, side yards, patios, balconies, courtyards, mini gardens, basically anywhere you can stand and say, this looks like a good spot. But we're not just listing fruit trees. Anyone can list fruit trees. We're digging into the personality of each one. What makes it surprising? What makes it unique, and why your neighbors will wander over pretending they're just checking on the weather when really they want to stare at your tree and wonder what kind of magic you're working. Because when you grow fruit in a small yard, there's always this moment when someone sees your tree for the first time and you can almost hear the gears in their head grinding like, wait, you can grow that in a space this small? Yes. Yes, you absolutely can. And the truth is, growing fruit at home never loses its magic. When something you planted decides to feed you real food you can hold and taste and share, it hits different. It connects you to the seasons, to nature, to patience, and funnily enough, it even connects you to your space more deeply. A small yard doesn't feel small when it's productive. It feels intentional. The first tree I always recommend isn't because it's exotic or rare. It's because it's almost comically perfect for beginners: dwarf apples. There's something disarming about how cooperative dwarf apple trees are. They don't ask for much, they don't act dramatic, and they don't make you feel guilty if you miss a day or two of watering. The dwarf varieties stay petite, charming, and manageable. And the thing that catches people off guard is how abundantly they still produce. You get full-size apples from a tree that looks like it belongs in a storybook illustration. And you know what? Apples are one of those fruits people assume require big orchards and complicated pollination strategies. But the truth is, many modern varieties are self-fertile. That means even if your yard is the size of a doormat, a single tree can give you bowl after bowl of apples. And if you really want to flex, you can graft multiple apple varieties onto one trunk and grow an entire grocery aisle of flavors from one tiny tree. Imagine telling your friends, oh yeah, that's my tree. It grows Honeycrisp, Gala, and Fuji at the same time. Watch their eyebrows lift like garage doors. Right next to apples in my small yard hall of fame sits the dwarf peach tree. If apples are the reliable friend who always shows up on time, peach trees are the passionate, summer-loving artist with flair. They burst into bloom like they're putting on a show, then follow up with juicy fruit that tastes like sunshine. The crazy part? A dwarf peach tree can produce more peaches than most families know what to do with. People imagine peach trees towering over old southern farms, but dwarf peaches stay compact and container-friendly. And here's a secret. Peach trees absolutely love heat. That tiny yard that feels like an oven in the afternoon, to a peach tree, that's heaven. They soak it in and reward you with fruit that tastes like it belongs in a dessert bowl. And nothing makes you feel like a gardening wizard faster than casually plucking peaches from a tree that barely hits your chin. Now let's talk figs. Figs are the quiet geniuses of the fruit world. They don't brag, they don't demand attention, and yet they deliver some of the most luxurious fruit you can grow at home. People who've only ever had store-bought figs are always shocked by how different they taste fresh from the tree. Sweeter, softer, richer, and a dwarf fig tree fits into tiny spaces like it was designed for modern gardeners. They thrive in pots, they handle pruning beautifully, and they don't mind being slightly neglected. Figs are like those friends who can sleep anywhere. Give them a pot, give them a patio, and they're content. And one of my favorite things about fig trees is how forgiving they are. Make a mistake? They don't hold grudges. Forget a watering? They carry on. Trim them aggressively? They grow back with enthusiasm. This makes them perfect for people who are still learning or experimenting. And visually, they're stunning. Big leaves, sculptural shape, the kind of plant that makes a space feel designed, even if you're just winging it. Then there's citrus, lemons, limes, mandarins. Citrus trees bring a kind of joy that's hard to describe. Maybe it's because they stay green year-round. Maybe it's because they smell incredible. Maybe it's because they look tropical even when you're nowhere near the tropics. Citrus trees radiate happiness. And dwarf citrus makes these cheerful trees accessible to anyone with a few feet of space. One special thing about citrus is how long the fruit hangs on the tree. Lemons and limes often sit on the branches for months, which means your tree can look like it's decorated with ornaments most of the year. And those glossy leaves, they're like free landscaping. Even people who don't know anything about gardening walk past a citrus tree and go, "Wow, that's nice." And they're right, it is. Now, if you want something a little unexpected, something that sparks conversation, look at dwarf pomegranates. Pomegranates have this ancient storybook quality. They feel mythological. And yet the dwarf varieties are compact enough for small patios. These trees bloom with the brightest, boldest flowers you'll ever see, like someone splashed your yard with watercolor. Then they produce adorable mini fruits that look gorgeous on the tree and taste just as good as the full-size ones. And pomegranates love heat, they love sunshine, and they tolerate dry conditions. So if your yard feels like it's auditioning to be a frying pan, this tree will be perfectly content. Plus, pomegranates have a natural sculptural shape. Even without fruit, they look classy. Right alongside pomegranates sits something many people overlook: dwarf mulberries. Mulberries have this nostalgic feel, like childhood summers and stained fingertips. But dwarf mulberries, those are like the urban-friendly reboot of a classic tree. Compact, productive, fast-growing, and surprisingly elegant. They give you handfuls of berries repeatedly through the season, not just one harvest. And the berries taste like a sweet mix of blackberry and raspberry with a hint of grape. It's one of those fruits people taste and immediately say, "Why don't we eat more of these?" And here's a fun bonus. Mulberries are ridiculously easy. They grow fast, they fruit early, they don't need coddling, and they handle pruning without complaint. If you're a gardener who likes to cut things back and see what happens, a dwarf mulberry will love you for it. Another small yard superstar that surprises people is the columnar apple. Imagine a fruit tree with no branches sticking out, just one tall, narrow, column-like trunk covered in fruit. These are made for tight spaces. They fit between walkways, into corners, along fences, even beside doorways. They grow vertically, not horizontally. And because of that, you can plant several of them side by side and create a living, fruit-producing fence. And of course, we can't talk about small spaces without mentioning dwarf pears. Pear trees have this classy, elegant look. Slender branches, gentle curves, romantic blooms. They give your yard a calm, peaceful aesthetic while providing fruit that tastes like honey and velvet. Pears store well, cook beautifully, and make you feel like someone from a rustic cooking show every time you slice one open. What ties all these trees together isn't just their size, it's their attitude. These are trees that fit into your life instead of forcing you to shape your life around them. They adapt, they tolerate, they cooperate. They're generous in small spaces. And when you grow them, something shifts. You stop seeing your yard as small. You start seeing it as full of possibilities, full of flavor, full of life. Growing fruit trees in a small yard teaches you that abundance has nothing to do with space. It has everything to do with intention.
And once you realize your yard has more potential than you ever imagined, the way you look at gardening changes. Suddenly, you don't see obstacles anymore. You see opportunities. Corners become micro orchards. Blank walls become backdrops for fruit. Balconies turn into tropical hideaways. And those narrow strips of space next to the fence, those turn into some of the most productive growing zones you'll ever cultivate. But here's the beautiful thing. The moment you plant a fruit tree, even a tiny one, you're making a long-term decision that pays you back every year. You're saying, "I want more life here." You're adding shade, food, greenery, beauty, fragrance, and habitat all in one move. That's why fruit trees are unmatched. Vegetables come and go, herbs fade in and out, but fruit trees stay. They become part of the identity of your space. And let's talk honestly for a moment, because most gardeners have experienced this. There's nothing like walking outside and seeing fruit that you grew shining under the sunlight, waiting to be picked. something inside you lights up. It feels ancient, instinctive, like something humans were always meant to do. We were born to grow things, to nurture them, to harvest the rewards. And you don't need a big space to feel that. A tiny yard can carry all of that magic and more. One of the best parts about growing fruit in small spaces is the creativity it encourages. When you're working with limited room, you start asking different questions. How can I grow upward instead of outward? What varieties stay small naturally? Can I train this tree flat against a wall? Can I put this one in a pot so I can move it around in winter? And each question unlocks new techniques that most gardeners with large yards don't even think about. Espalier, for example, is one of the oldest gardening arts, training fruit trees to grow flat along a wall or fence, creating branches that look like tiers or patterns. When people see an espaliered apple or pear tree in a small yard, the reaction is always the same. Silence, followed by, "What is that?" It turns your garden into a conversation piece instantly. And the best part? It saves a ton of space. A single espaliered tree can give you loads of fruit while taking up barely a foot of horizontal room. Another strategy small yard gardeners are embracing is container orcharding. That's right, an orchard in pots. It sounds impossible until you realize trees adapt incredibly well to container life when you choose dwarfed or genetically compact types. In fact, some fruit trees actually produce more reliably in containers because you control the soil, the drainage, and the feeding. Plus, if you live somewhere with unpredictable winters, pots let you move your trees into protected spots when needed. And here's a trick most people don't know. Fruit trees in containers tend to start producing sooner. Something about the slightly restricted root zone encourages them to put more energy into flowering and fruiting. It's like they think, well, since I can't go down, I'll go up, and I'll give you some fruit while I'm at it. So your small yard becomes this compact, high-yield system where everything stays manageable. Let's go deeper into a few more trees that thrive beautifully in tight spaces. One of my favorites is dwarf nectarine. They're like peaches' smooth-skinned cousins, and they love warm climates. Nectarines pack unbelievable flavor into small fruit, and the trees often stay even tidier than dwarf peaches. If you like a tree that stays neat and symmetrical without you constantly shaping it, dwarf nectarines are ideal. They also bloom heavily, so your small yard gets a wild burst of pink or white flowers before the fruit develops. Then there's the feijoa, also known as pineapple guava. This one shocks people every time because it's so low maintenance it feels like cheating. These trees produce fruit that tastes like minty pineapple mixed with sweet guava, and they have edible flower petals that taste like marshmallows dipped in sugar. Feijoa trees are evergreen, drought-tolerant, pest-resistant, and compact enough for any small yard or container. They also handle poor soil better than most fruit trees. And then we have the star of the "I can't believe this fits here" category, the dwarf banana. Now, bananas aren't technically trees, they're giant herbs, but they definitely earn their place in a small yard fruit collection. Compact banana varieties like dwarf Cavendish stay surprisingly small and produce real, edible bananas even in containers. And they instantly transform a small yard into a tropical retreat. People walk outside and see those giant leaves and go, "What in the world? How do you have bananas growing here?" And that's what small space gardening is all about. Creating little surprises that make your space unforgettable. Another tree worth mentioning is the dwarf apricot. These produce some of the sweetest fruit you'll ever taste, and because of their early bloom, they bring spring into your yard ahead of schedule. Compact apricot trees do great in containers, thrive in sunny spots, and reward you with glowing orange fruit that feels like a hidden treasure. The branches stay compact, making them perfect for patios. And of course, I can't leave out the dwarf plum. These might be the most underrated fruit trees for small spaces. Plums pack ridiculous amounts of flavor into small fruit, and the dwarf varieties stay polite, manageable, and beautifully structured. The spring blossoms are stunning, and the fruit color ranges from deep purple to red to golden yellow, depending on the type you choose. Plums also tend to be reliable producers, making them perfect for new growers. Now here's something that separates confident small yard gardeners from the rest: understanding that pruning is your superpower. Most people think pruning is about controlling size, but pruning is really about shaping the tree you want. A properly pruned dwarf tree stays compact, healthy, open, and productive. It gets tons of sunlight penetration, better airflow, and stronger fruit quality. You're not fighting the tree, you're guiding it. And when you learn how to prune gently and consistently, your small yard suddenly feels bigger because every tree fits perfectly where you place it. And there's also something deeply therapeutic about pruning. It slows you down. It makes you observe. You start noticing things you ignored before. The texture of the bark, the angles of the branches, the tiny buds forming. It's one of the most peaceful gardening tasks you can do, and it connects you more deeply to your plants. But even if you're nervous about pruning, don't worry. Dwarf and compact varieties are extremely forgiving. You can keep them small simply by removing the longest shoot or two each season. That's it. Most small yard gardeners prune less than they think, they just do it more consistently. Another huge advantage of fruit trees in small spaces is how much wildlife they attract. Bees, butterflies, beneficial insects, they all flock to blossoming trees. Even urban yards, which often feel sterile or quiet, come alive when you plant fruit trees. Suddenly, you hear buzzing, you see movement, you watch birds hopping around the branches looking for tiny insects. Your small yard becomes an ecosystem instead of an empty space, and that adds a kind of magic that's hard to describe until you see it yourself. And speaking of magic, let's talk about the reactions these trees bring. When guests come over and see apples, peaches, lemons, figs, cherries, mulberries, or plums growing in a tiny yard, they always have the same reaction. First, surprise, then curiosity, then the inevitable questions, how? When did you plant this? How big will it get? Could I grow this? And suddenly you've inspired someone else to try gardening. That's the ripple effect fruit trees create. They don't just feed you, they spark conversations, memories, even friendships. In fact, one of the unexpected joys of growing fruit trees in small spaces is how social it becomes. When the harvest comes in, you often end up sharing because dwarf trees produce more than enough. You hand a neighbor a bowl of peaches or a bag of lemons or a handful of mulberries, and it instantly breaks the ice. Fruit has this wonderful way of bringing people together. It's hard to be unfriendly when someone hands you a piece of sun-ripened fruit grown with care. And let's not forget, growing your own fruit saves money. Good fruit is expensive, especially organic fruit. When you grow it yourself, you're cutting costs in a beautiful, meaningful way. One small tree can produce tens or even hundreds of dollars worth of fruit each year. Over time, these trees pay themselves many times over. So not only are you transforming your yard, you're transforming your grocery bill. Now, after all this, you might be imagining your yard filled with tiny trees like characters in a storybook. And honestly, that's exactly the vibe. Each tree has its own personality, its own rhythm, its own energy. The apple tree is steady and generous, the peach tree is dramatic and sweet, the fig tree is ancient and wise, the citrus tree is cheerful and fragrant, the pomegranate tree is bold and artistic, the mulberry tree is playful and abundant, the cherry tree is elegant, the pear tree is romantic, the feijoa is quirky, the banana is tropical and surprising, the plum is rich and dependable, and they all fit beautifully into a small yard if you choose the right varieties and give them a little love. And here's the thing I want everyone to truly feel. Your yard is enough. It doesn't need to be bigger. It doesn't need to be grand. It just needs you. Your imagination, your intention, your willingness to plant something and watch it grow. A small yard forces you to think with purpose. It invites creativity. It encourages intention. And intention always makes a garden better. Some of the most breathtaking gardens in the world are tiny. Some of the best fruit trees I've ever seen lived in containers. Some of the sweetest peaches I've ever tasted grew on a tree that barely reached my shoulder. When you stop believing that bigger is better and start believing that thoughtful is better, your garden transforms, and you transform with it. If there's one message I hope sticks with you, it's this. Small yards can produce big harvests, huge harvests, surprising harvests, harvests that make you proud. And when you plant even one fruit tree,